So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week, so I hope you enjoy this story. Just take a moment to allow your eyes to close and allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, I'm just going to tell a story in the background. And I don't know whether you're going to go deeper with the sound of my voice or perhaps the spaces between my words. And as you begin to drift comfortably and relax to sleep, you can have a sense of imagining that you're inside a tent. And you're in a tent with the sound of the wind moving the sides of the tent. You can notice how wrapped up and warm you are in a sleeping bag in that tent. And you're just beginning to drift and float comfortably asleep in that sleeping bag. And you're aware that outside the tent, a snowstorm is raging, but you're so comfortable and relaxed inside the tent, relaxed inside the sleeping bag. And as you continue to relax deeper and deeper in that sleeping bag, your mind starts to drift and dream. And because of where you are in that cold environment, your mind drifts and dreams to somewhere pleasant and warm. You begin to have this sense of walking along the most beautiful sandy beach. And as you walk along that sandy beach, you can hear the seabirds overhead, feel the warmth of the sun on your face. You can notice what each footstep feels like as you walk through that sand, and the sound of the water lapping gently on the shore. And as you walk along this seafront, so you begin to wonder why this experience feels so real to you, that you've drifted asleep many times before, you've dreamt many times before, but something about this experience feels different. Everything just feels so much more vivid, more real. And as you continue to walk along the seafront, you notice some rocks off in the distance. And you walk over to those rocks. And you look at the way the water flows around those rocks that jut out into the sea. The sound of that water as it strikes the rocks gently. You rest a hand on the rock and feel the warmth of that rock, where the sun has been warming those rocks up through the day. And you climb up onto the rocks. You cross your legs and you just sit there looking out to sea. And as you do, you notice some dolphins swimming in the distance. They suddenly catch your attention. You see the way they jump out the water, splash down into the water. And you notice what looks like a person swimming among those dolphins. And they look like they're all playing or having fun. And you find yourself almost transfixed on watching them, that sight of somebody swimming with the dolphins. And then you see the strangest thing. You notice one of the dolphins jumps clear of the water, does a backflip and twist in the air before splashing down, barely making movement of that water. And then you see that person seem to also jump clear of the water, spin in the air and splash down. And you notice that it looks like they've got a tail. And you think you must be seeing things. They're a little way out to sea. And you continue watching. And you continue thinking, wondering how they could do that. If they didn't have a tail, you start trying to think in your own mind. Could you swim to the surface in a swimming pool and leap clear out of the water, spin in the air and land smoothly back in the water? And you think to yourself, there's no way you could do that. And you carry on watching, thinking your eyes must be wrong. And then you see them doing it again, and you stand up on the rock. You put your hand above your eyes to try and get a closer look, as if somehow blocking out a little bit of the sun might help your vision improve. And then you notice that it looks like they've noticed you. And you see them starting to swim over towards you. And they swim towards you far quicker than you expected. It didn't take them long to arrive at the shore. And they're a little way off from the shore. And they seem to stop and be treading water. And they call over to you, they get your attention. And you engage in conversation. And you notice that they look so athletic, with long hair, like they're built for distance swimming. And they look really powerful, like they can make these rapid bursts of energy. And they engage you in conversation, asking who you are, and saying that you look a bit curious and confused, and you explain what you thought you saw, and you dismiss it with a bit of a laugh, as if somehow you think you're saying something stupid. And they tell you that there are no stupid questions. It's just that sometimes you get stupid answers. And you find yourself smiling at their comment. And they invite you in to the ocean. And so you walk into the ocean, you swim out towards them, and they say that they've got somewhere for you to visit, somewhere that may transform your perspective. And with curiosity, you decide to follow them. And they rest their hand on your back, and you feel a warmth through your chest, through your shoulders, a warmth that spreads down through your arms. And they turn and they look at you, and they say, "Trust me." And they hold your hand and dive under the water as you go with them and dive with them. And while they hold your hand, they swim so incredibly fast. and you trust them. And after a while you suddenly realise that you haven't needed to breathe, that it seemed that whatever they just did to you has made it so that you don't need to breathe in and out air, and that you can trust them. And then they seem to swim faster and faster and accelerate, while holding you securely. And you feel so safe and trusting of them. And then they arrive at a palace deep under the ocean. And they swim in through what's a bit like a wall of the palace. And then the water in this area that you've landed just inside the palace drains away. And as it drains away, so the mermaid's tail turns to legs. And you look around yourself, you look behind yourself, and you see where you've just come in, and you see that wall of water, as if somehow there's like an invisible force field stopping that water from entering this area. And they take your hand and they walk you into the palace. They start walking you through that palace. And after a short walk, you notice you begin to dry off, and they show you different ornaments, different statues, and you can see other people milling around. And you're aware that all of these are mer people, that they seem to have the ability to rapidly change from having a tail to having legs. And you ask about this. And they explain that it's a mix of something you can consciously control. You can decide to change from tail to legs or legs back to tail, but also something that happens automatically, depending on the situation that you're in. And they show you to a room and tell you that they expected you, and that you may not believe this, but they actually have a picture of you. And in this room that looks like the most beautiful white room, almost like the walls are glowing white, there's a large framed painting on a wall. And you look at that painting and you see that it's a painting that looks just like you, sat in front of a campfire in a large, open, snowy area with a tent beside the campfire. And stars and an aurora in the background. And you realise it looks a lot like the you that's fallen asleep, as if it could be during that trip. And they explain that this is more than a dream, that this experience is a projection of consciousness to another location. a projection of consciousness, so that for you it feels like you're there as a whole body. But you actually just projected as consciousness and formed yourself here. And that it was because you need to learn something from this experience. And you have the strangest experience that as you near that picture, you start to hear the sound of the wind. You start to feel coolness oozing off of the picture. And as you back away, that coolness calms down, and the sound of the wind calms down. And while you watch the picture, you have this sense that the fire is beginning to move incredibly slowly, almost like the picture is actually just a moment in time that's playing over and over again on a loop. And you ask what you're supposed to be learning. And they say that you need to be exploring your memories to discover that you're always making memories, and you need to be exploring them. That memories are like cakes. They're made up of different parts, different bits of information, and how you put it all together and what you do with it influences the kind of outcome that you have. Some go well and are pleasant, others not so good, and that there's a memory to recall. And they tell you that it will link back to that moment in that picture. And you sit down on a chair, looking up at the picture, watching that fire as it gently moves. And while watching the fire, the mermaid walks off. She says that she'll leave you to it for a little while. You'll know when you've found the answer. And as you gaze at that fire, looking at the colours of the fire, you start to have this sense of seeing a giraffe, as if somehow the colours of the fire remind you of the giraffe's neck as those flames rise up from the fire. And then it's almost like you're in some kind of virtual reality world. Almost like you go into some kind of space in your mind where the palace disappears from around you, and you can hear the sounds of other people, and you can see the giraffe. And you look around you and you realise that you're walking through a zoo, and you remember this memory, you remember this time, you remember coming to this zoo. You remember that over in the corner is a shed-like building containing some of the spiders and scorpions. You remember that most of these animals are rescued, and that you had different thoughts while walking through here. And you remember a girl accidentally bumping into you, dropping something, and you handed it back to her and felt an unusual connection with that person, with that young girl. And as you walk around this zoo, so you start hearing a ticking in your mind. And the first thing you think of is a ticking like you're going to be late. And you follow that ticking out of the zoo. You find your way out to the main shops in the streets near the zoo. You realise that this zoo, when you came here, it's on a seafront, but it's not quite the same seafront as you were on a minute ago. And you walk along and you find a shop that sounds like it's ticking. You enter that shop, you hear the jingling of the bell at the door. You see all the clocks around the walls. You see someone working on a watch. And you look around the shop, wondering what led you to be in here. And you see that this person who does clocks, who fixes them up, looks like they also do shoes. Like maybe they sometimes work as a cobbler. And it doesn't look like their main business. Just perhaps a little bit extra to help make some income where needed. Most people nowadays don't need their shoes fixed. People just buy new shoes. And as you look around, you notice that there's a box containing shoes that look like they've never been collected. And you inquire about that box. And without looking up, the person says that's a box of shoes that they've repaired. The owners have never come back. And they've ended up having those shoes just left in the box that anyone can purchase. And they can purchase those shoes with any kind of donation. The shoes aren't theirs to sell, so they won't sell them. So any donation is welcome. And you feel around your pockets to find something for a donation. And you find an old pocket watch in your pocket. You place it on the counter. And you take some really interesting purple shoes. You don't know why you're drawn to them, but you hear this voice in your mind saying those every time your eyes look at them. And so you walk out with those purple shoes. You decide to change into the shoes. And you feel that they're a little bit rigid at the moment. So you walk around, you like the solid sound that they make with each step. That they make the kind of sound that makes you stride and feel confident. That to get the best rhythm from the shoes, you have to walk with broad steps. And while you're listening to the rhythm of those shoes, you close your eyes from moment to moment to allow your ears to focus on that rhythm deeper. And then you come to a halt. You open your eyes. You turn and look out over the sea. And as you look out over the sea, you wonder why you're here. That all of this is you sitting in front of that picture. And so you try and process that, trying to work out whether you're actually still sitting in front of that picture, whether this is all one elaborate dream. And then as you stand there, you tap those shoes together. And as you tap those shoes together, so an electric blue light begins to form around your feet, begins to spread up around your body, sparkling, shining, almost like it's in a slight white mist or fog forming around you. And then as that clears, you discover that you're sat staring at that flickering flame back in that palace. And you look down and see that you're wearing those purple shoes. And you don't know what the purple shoes mean. And then the mermaid appears to say that it's time now to go back to the beach. And you say that you don't want to get the purple shoes wet. And they tell you it'll be fine. And they walk you back into that airlock. Water begins to fill up this space. They touch you on the shoulder again. You feel that warmth through your chest, around your arms, your back. And then as the water fills this area, you both swim straight back through that force field, back out into the open ocean. And then the mermaid rapidly swims you back to where she found you. And you swim over to the shore. You walk out the water. You look back over at the mermaid. She tells you your shoes are fine. And you look down and notice they feel as dry as if you've not been in the water. And they look as dry as if you've not been in the water. And you look up and the mermaid's gone. And then you walk off that rock. You walk through the sand, and as you do, you begin to hear the sounds in that tent and have this sense of waking up. And as you start to wake up, so you feel that your feet are really cold. And you turn on the light in the tent, turning on a torch you've got hanging from the top of the tent. You unzip the sleeping bag And you notice that your feet are almost purple looking, and you realise that the end of the sleeping bag had been touching the side of the tent, and that somehow the cold had seeped through to your feet. And you get yourself ready for the day in the tent. You put some extra layers onto your feet, and you worry that your feet now won't fit in the boots you've got specifically for this journey. But as you worry about that, you see the thickest, most comfortable looking pair of purple boots just stood there near the entrance of the tent. And that purple looks exactly the same as the purple of the shoes, and something about them looks familiar like the shoes, and you don't know where those purple boots came from. And they've got the thickest, most comfortable fluff on the inside, and you slide your feet into them. You do them up, and you think to yourself that it's almost like having a hug on each foot. And you can notice the way the light is beginning to rise outside, is illuminating the walls of this tent. The wind begins to die down. You unzip the tent. You can see the snow has risen up, part way up the outside of the tent. You push that snow aside. You walk out into the snow, take some fresh breaths of that air. Feel the crispness of that air, the comfort of breathing in that air, and the crunching sound of walking through that snow. And you crunch down an area where you can start a campfire. You light that campfire. You sit down near the campfire and make yourself some breakfast. You imagine that if you're at home, right now you'd probably love to have some ice cream. Sitting out on a warm summer's day, whereas here you couldn't imagine eating anything like that. But you do wonder whether you'd still get brain freeze, given that everything else is equally as cold. And while you eat breakfast, you wonder about the experience you've had, about the dream that you had. You're aware that there must be more to it than just a dream, because these boots were here. But you don't know what all the meaning was, and why you visited the zoo, and where that beach was, and who the mermaid was. And after eating, you pack everything up, and you continue your trek through the snow. And you walk through that snow, dragging a sled with your tent and other belongings on it. And you're making this journey partly because it's something to help to teach you that you can still achieve things if you put your mind to it. That you can do things that have no other goal than achievement. And feeling that sense of accomplishment. And trying to put things into perspective. And you're heading to a specific town, a small town, but a specific town. You'd heard from one of your friends that the town was just over an area of water, so you planned to make the same journey. And as you continued through the day, so the sun passed across the sky, and the sun began to lower down in the sky. And as the sun's rays were really low across the snow, so you noticed, at the corner of your eye, a glistening, glinting point in the distance. And it continued to glisten and glint, and so you wanted to go and explore that, and discover what it could be. And although it was off in the distance, you felt like you could deviate and still get back on course easy enough. So you walked in the direction of that glistening, glinting point of light. And as you got nearer, you noticed that there's a slight mound in that area, a bit like a hill. And you pull up the sled. You put everything down and you walk to that glistening bit of light. And you see a pillar of ice crystals sticking up out of the ground that seem to be catching that light as it shines across the snow. And as you sit down looking at that pillar of ice crystals, you notice that it seems to be pointing in a specific direction, and as you look over it, you notice a slight indentation in that mound. And you walk over to that indentation, and with your hands you start to dig away. And you remove that snow. And you find what looks like a wooden door that's frozen solid. And you pull on that door. You manage to break it free. Work it loose. You open that door and you see some steps leading down from that door. You go back to your sled, you grab your torch. You decide to explore wherever this leads. You start walking down those steps, deeper and deeper underground, deeper under this snow, deeper under this mound. And the first thing you notice as you walk under the ground is how much warmer it is down here, the deeper you go. And you shine the light around the walls of a tunnel. You can hear just the occasional drip in this tunnel. And you walk along the tunnel. Then it opens out into a large cavern And as it does, you notice the way the light from your torch just suddenly seems to be reflecting and dancing and making all the walls sparkle. And you realise that somehow it's as if this cavern is made out of salt. As if perhaps an ocean was once in this area that evaporated, or some other salty body of water that's evaporated, leaving all this salt behind. And then a cavern has been dug out in this salt. And you head across the cavern and you see a chest in a hole in the wall. You lift that chest up, place it on the floor. You open that chest and see the most beautiful, ornately crafted red and gold rug. And around that rug is some ribbon. And you untie the ribbon. You unroll the rug. You go to place that rug on the ground. And as you do, you're surprised that it seems to not be on the ground. And you think it's perhaps an illusion. And so you put your foot onto the rug, just gently, not wanting to mark this rug. And it feels a little springy, almost like you're standing on something that's inflated. And so you crouch down and you put your hand on that rug. You push on different points on that rug, and you realise that it is floating slightly above the ground. And then you hear a voice in your mind saying, "Climb on." And you look around you, wondering whether it was a voice in your mind or whether someone else was here. And you hear that voice again saying, "Climb on." And you realise that that voice seems to be the rug, communicating through you into your mind. So you climb onto that rug. You sit down in the middle of the rug, and as you do so, it rises up a little further. It tells you to get the other items from the box. You look in the box, but all you can see is a vase, a teapot, and a teacup. And some dry lavender. And you hear that voice again to take everything from that and put it on the rug. So you take all those items. You place the teapot down on the rug, the teacup down on the rug, the lavender down on the rug, and the vase down on the rug. You then decide that perhaps you'll put the lavender in the vase. And as you do, you decide to have a little smell of that lavender. And you breathe in the smell of that lavender. And then the strangest thing happens. The teapot suddenly seems to warm, and you notice steam coming out of the spout of the pot. You pick that teapot up and realise it's got hot water in it, or perhaps hot tea, and you pour that into the cup and have the perfect cup of tea poured in front of you. And you pick up that tea, you have a little taste of the tea. You admire how nice that tastes. And then you hear the words "hold on." And while you wonder what those words mean, you see a flash of light, and then find that somehow this flying carpet has flown out of that cavern. You find yourself flying over a vast land. You see people in streets below. You see cats and dogs. You see the birds overhead. And this flying carpet tells you how great it is to be free from that box as it flies you around, before settling down halfway up a mountain, overlooking a vast land on a slight plateau. And as you enjoy the view and you watch that sun setting over that land you've just flown over, drinking that tea, you wonder about this experience as well. And this flying carpet tells you that everything is connected. That sometimes an experience you have in one place is connected to something you do elsewhere. You just don't necessarily see those connections at first. And you get off of that rug, get off of that carpet and have a little wander, stretch your legs. And you realise behind you there's a cave. And this cave feels familiar. And you walk into the cave. And in the cave you find another chest. You open that chest and find a teddy bear. You hold that teddy bear and you start thinking about childhood memories spent with that teddy bear. And you realise this is a teddy that you used to have when you were much younger. And that one day it went missing. And you got really upset at the loss of this teddy. And you're now wondering how it got here and how it could be possible that you could be here at the same time in the same location as a teddy bear used to have as a child. You remember some of your adventures with that teddy bear. And you go back out to that carpet and you have a little smile to yourself at the idea of having a teddy bear's picnic, or even in this case a teddy bear's tea party. And you sit with Teddy while looking out over the view, wondering why Teddy was in this cave in a box. And as you stroke the fur of Teddy, so Teddy begins to sparkle. And then seems to cough. And almost seems to sneeze. And sparkles seem to come out of Teddy's nose, followed by what looks like a small little green fairy. And you drop Teddy in surprise. And then you pick up Teddy, feeling almost guilty, even though you know it's just a teddy bear. And the green fairy thanks you for freeing them. That a long time ago, this was your teddy bear, You have many adventures with them. Back in an era, back at a time where you used to believe in magic. You used to believe that all things were possible. And you used to believe in fairies at the bottom of the garden. You used to believe that the gnomes did more than just sitting there fishing. But you were constantly told, magic isn't real. You shouldn't believe in magic. And that over time, you started to doubt the magic of the world. You started to doubt wonder. You started to disbelieve. And as you did, this green fairy tells you, they were trying to encourage you that they're real, that you should believe in magic and the wonder of the world. You should see magic everywhere. And you started ignoring them because you believed that you shouldn't believe. And then they got trapped inside Teddy. And Teddy was just left lying around. And so it was known that you'd one day have a light bulb moment. You'd suddenly have something happen that will bring you back to discovering the magic of the world. You just need the motivation. You'd need to take that first step. And then all the magic you've encountered growing up will come back to help you on your journey of rediscovery. And so Teddy was moved to the right location for the right time. And the green fairy explained that they were left here to watch over Teddy until the time was right. And it turned into something that felt like a long time. And now the time is right. You've gone on this journey of discovery, this journey of challenging yourself, of putting yourself through an experience to discover the wonders of the world, to explore with curiosity, to reconnect with the magic. And so the magic has reconnected with you. And you continue to drink that tea as you watch the sun setting and you watch the moon rising. You see the changes in the light. See the way the moonlight makes everything glow so beautiful. Seems to shine so wonderfully down on sparkling lakes. Seeing the stars twinkling in the sky, the occasional shooting star. Lying back on that flying carpet, wondering whether there could be anyone out there, perhaps in a galaxy far, far away. Looking back, wondering if there's anyone out there. And then as night continues to set in, the flying carpet says they're going to take you back. And you take Teddy with you. and the fairy shares some words of wisdom. And then that carpet speeds off, finds its way back to that cavern. And the carpet communicates to you to take it with you. Place it on the floor at home, where you'll always remember it and see it, as a reminder of the journey and your connection with magic and with the magic of the world. And so you wrap that up. You tie the ribbons back round that carpet, and you take that out of the cavern with you, and are surprised that it seems like no extra time has passed here. But you're aware that the sun's beginning to set, and that you'll continue and complete your journey in the morning. And so you set up a campfire, set up your tent. You sit down by the campfire, cook yourself something to eat, and then you realize this moment is the picture. This moment is what you saw in the underwater palace. And as you look down under the moonlight, you notice what looks like some penguins huddled together in the distance. And you find it curious because you are sure that you didn't get penguins around here. But they definitely look like they're huddled together, keeping warm, gradually circling from the middle to the outside and the outside to the middle. In such a beautiful way, almost hypnotic. And then you reach over and you pick up the teddy, and you hold that teddy and you feel that it feels a little warm, and you reminisce again, and you're glad to see Teddy again. And then you notice something unusual as you feel that teddy bear. It feels like there's something tucked inside the teddy. And you remember that Teddy had a back that could be opened, that it had some Velcro just holding that back closed. So you open the back and you find the most beautiful looking, well carved music box with a small little metal handle, and you start turning that handle, listening to the sound of the tune that music box plays. And you play it through a few times before putting that in your pocket. And after finishing eating and relaxing, you settle down in the tent, and comfortably and relaxed you drift asleep. And you have the deepest, most profound, most wonderful, healing sleep. Awakening from that sleep, just feeling calm, feeling at peace, feeling ready to get on with the day, feeling like your mind is clearer than it's been in years, feeling like your body feels more full of energy and life than it's felt in years, feeling a connection with the world around you, And so you continue your journey. You head down to that water. You take an inflatable boat off the back of your sled. Inflate that boat. Place everything into that boat. You push the boat out into the water. You row your way across that water, pushing through some ice as you go. On the other side of the water, you pull everything towards that nearby town that you're heading to. You look forward to being able to go and sleep in a real bed, in a warm bed. You arrive at that town just as the sun is setting again. You walk into the small little hotel that you'll be staying in. You go to the counter. They hand you the key to your room. You ascend the stairs, head along the corridor, walk into the room, and you sit down on that bed, bouncing a little, noticing how springy that bed seems, how much softer the bed seems than lying in a sleeping bag in a tent. You go and have a warm shower. Lie down on the bed. You begin to just drift comfortably and peacefully asleep, thinking about the journey you've been on, wondering about what you're going to tell people about this journey, and curious how life will change now you have connected with the magic of the world again, and accepted that there is wonder and magic everywhere. While you think about that, you begin to drift and float asleep. Drifting and floating into the most comfortable, relaxed and peaceful sleep